Hi Kirsty, thank you for submitting your piece. I'm doing feedback in this way so that I can talk you through the comments, explain what's meant by any comments that are made, and hopefully that way they'll make more sense to you and be more useful to you as you go forward in your studies. So first of all, the use of I or the first person isn't to be used in academic writing unless in the case of a reflection. So rather than using the I, we would generalize that information and support it with sources. So the entire piece is your opinion, it's your work. So it's assumed that your feelings, your thoughts and your opinions are put forward in the piece. So we would never use I within academic writing. We would always either use past tense or generalize that information. So in this case, in this essay, the balance between open access and targeted provision will be critically analysed, or targeted provision in contemporary youth work in Ireland will be critically analysed. Information will be drawn from funding streams in which youth organisations receive and the difference in funding and allocations within youth work environment or some such. Okay, so no I. When we use the word I, it's like saying I think the QWERTY keyboard is a better alternative than another type of keyboard. And that dilutes your opinion because it makes it very solely your opinion. Whereas in academic writing, you're supposed to say the QWERTY keyboard is a far better alternative than other keyboards because, and then use a number of sources in order to back up your opinion and to emphasize your point. Particularly within humanities, as a subjective subject, you can support any point, and it's the support that you give it that proves its credibility. So here, if we're citing the Youth Work Act, this needs to be in brackets. Okay, so the Youth Work Act and in brackets 2001 makes it a citation, and therefore we don't need this, which, by the way, the Act is a far better citation, a far more valid citation than that. And this is incorrectly formatted. But when we say the Youth Work Act 2001 defines youth work as, and we need to start our brackets here, a planned programme, because it's a direct quotation. It's straight from the Act itself. Again, here is the citation for that, so you don't need to cite it in brackets at the end. This is just exactly the same as a citation. Plus, your citations here are incorrect. So, and they're also generated references, so from some form of software, but whatever your settings are wrong, or they've been entered as the wrong thing. So this book is, when we're doing our citations, the surname and the year is used in the case of authors. In the case of multiple authors, two authors, both surnames and the year. In the case of more than three or more, it's the primary author or the first author, et al., and the year. If we're using organisations, then we name the organisation. Okay, it's not presented in the forename, surname kind of a way. So this will be Irish Statute Book 2020. But as I said, we've quoted the Act, so that is not necessary. Here, okay, so 11 to 25 here, it's 10 to 25 in Ireland, so just make sure it's stated right. This as a source needs to be within brackets, so Banks Common 1994, page 3, and here, if there's any of this that's a direct quote, it needs to be in quotation marks, Kirsty. And I suspect that some of this is word for word what's in in the source. And again, the quotation is incorrect. So we're presenting an organisation as if it were a person. So just be careful of that. Here again, we're using a first person, so we don't use the first person in academics. So all of the piece is your opinion. There's no need to say that. So here we would say youth work is an informal type of education and should have an end goal. Simple as. I think it would have been more effective to use this paragraph up here after the definition of youth work, seeing as that's what you're talking about, and this involves a little bit of a critique of it. So if you had have defined youth work as per the Youth Work Act, then said that it's rather than say that it's complementary to formal education, it kind of lessens its purpose and makes it appear to be inferior to education, that youth work has things to offer in other forms, and then maybe present this definition as an alternative that sits a little better with your values or whatever. So here, open access youth work allows youth to roam freely. Rather, it is unstructured, so it's free flowing, but just roam freely makes it appear as if they have too much freedom. So perhaps unstructured might be a better choice of words there. And here, activities don't really encourage young people to reach their full potential and take responsibility. So I would suggest that you put activities and programs. Here we have repetition of it. So it enables, it provides, it also provides, it provides on each of the sentences. So just change up your choice of words in order to make it read a little bit better, or a little bit more flowy. When we repeat it kind of feels a little remedial. Okay, so your advantages and disadvantages were fine. You should really consider supporting them with sources so that you can build on them and develop them a little bit. So expand a little on the fact that young people, because open access is unstructured and has a freer flow to it, that young people can go from group to group and try out different activities and programs, and there's no onus on them to have to get along with certain people or whatever. Here, just in no way secure is a little bit informal in terms of language, Kirsty, so that would need to be phrased a little better. So insecure maybe, so funding is insecure or whatever. In terms of them being able to the disparity in how both groups are treated sometimes. So this is rather than being a project, it's a type of provision, and it can take any form. So it can be one-to-one, it can be project work, it can be a men's group, a women's group, an issue-based group, whatever. Here I would suggest or have a bad socioeconomic background rather than making that a criteria. And not all targeted provision is Garda Youth Diversion, so it may not be funded by the Department of Justice. Here, the activities, it might just be worth stating there that there will be focused attention or given to whatever the presenting issue for the targeted group was, so that they receive help that they need when they need it. Rather than say that they can't join because they mightn't be in a specific area, or they mightn't be disadvantaged enough, it might be a little bit better to go with the fact that they mightn't be referred if it's a referral service. So how are people taken into the targeted service? So is it by referrals? Is it that some young people might have the presenting issue but haven't been it hasn't been uncovered or whatever yet, it's gone unnoticed so far. Maybe that some young people don't want to engage in targeted provision because it's a little too intense, rather than just a geographical thing. This again is a good point, a bit of a repetition from earlier, but it may appear from those looking in that negative behaviour is being rewarded. In those cases, here, just for your citation, Kirsty, it should be Barrett, 2011. We don't name the whole thing in our references. So here we shouldn't have, again, the first person. It's a good point, but rather than presenting it in an anecdotal way from your experience, maybe present it in a more general way. So it is a really good point. So rather than providing equity as designed, because targeted programs are supposed to allow those being targeted to start at the same starting position as other kids or other young people sometimes. But rather than creating that state of equity, they can end up discriminating or disadvantaging those that aren't being targeted. And it could be something to do with the fact that there is a reward and coercion kind of aspect to it in order to get young people to engage. Oh, come along, you'll get a pizza, or there'll be a trip at the end of it if we do what we're supposed to do. But is that the fault of targeted youth work provision, or is it how it's being applied by youth workers, and maybe youth workers' lack of imagination around how to run out programs without the use of rewards and coercion? Again, just your first person. Holistic and experiential learning. So here we've tied this back to targeted youth work, which is good. Everything that you mentioned should be tied back to the question and made relevant to either open access or targeted youth work. That's why we've asked it. So this is good. If we'd done the same with holistic, or that, it would have been good also. So to keep consistent with that. And when we're looking at here in terms of taking the weight off other services, try to link them again back to either open access or targeted youth work. So you could say that they're assisting county councils by keeping young people off the streets and minimising antisocial behaviour in both open access or targeted provision. Garda Youth Diversion means that the justice system is less stressed, etc. So be specific about what you mean and don't leave any room for misunderstanding or assumption by the reader. Okay, here only UBU is a 3-year project. Other projects are yearly, renewed yearly. Here, the government will only allocate money if they reach the outcomes. You might change that to needing to meet the criteria of the funding organisation. So here again, we've made this relevant to the questions that we've said. Garda Youth Diversion projects are funded by certain places. That funding depends on open access groups get their funding from more general places. Targeted groups get their funding from other places. More targeted funding. Taking cuts from all angles, again, as a little bit too informal a language or too colloquial. So just state the amount of cuts. You have the information here. It could just be that they've been subject to several cuts over the course of the last few years, and then describe it. Again, this is widely available on any website. There's no need to cite me. So rather than due to the large amounts of resources used, because that sounds like money wasted, you might say due to what is achieved with the resources allocated. If you're saying so much work has been done in youth work and by youth officers, then give examples to qualify that statement. And the same here when you say, I feel that the government should increase this sector. So funding needs to be increased to this sector because why, and give reasons why it would have an impact. So here, cuts being given to the sector, it's depriving young people of what they could be getting if there wasn't cuts given. So it's stating the obvious a little bit. Again, if we're saying it's evident, then we need to support that with examples and explain what we mean. Wages here are probably the largest outgoing of any youth project, far more than programme costs, which goes directly to young people. Wages are a large amount of the funding. You say here there are arguments, but what arguments? So if you're going to put a statement in like that, then qualify it and explain what it is that you mean. Here, this isn't really been as effective as it needs to be, and we've also, it's just Ritchie and Ord 2016. We don't put in their first initials. Here we have with the policies of Every Child Matters and Youth Matters, then there's a full stop, so that's not a complete sentence. And if it continues on, then these are these are both UK initiatives, and therefore, and so is the closing of open access youth clubs. And that doesn't mean that you can't use that information, but you need to make it relevant to the Irish context. So you might refer to these and the cutting and closing of youth clubs in England and state that with another recession coming, Ireland needs not to make the same mistake, blah, blah, blah. Just to tie it to what you're talking about and to show that you understand that these aren't from Ireland. Here you say both types of youth work are necessary, but you only support one. So you only say reasons for open access rather than targeted, so make that a little bit more clear. Again, rather than the first person, just generalize it. So there is no balance. And I'd suggest that you'd say that the balance is tipped in favour of one or the other or whatever. And here you have Ritchie and Ord in commas. If you're presenting them as a citation, then put them in brackets and the year with them. If you're saying according to Ritchie and Ord, you don't need the commas. You just need to put the year in brackets afterwards to show the source. Your conclusion was okay. And your bibliography, first of all, Kirsty, there's way too few sources for a level 8 piece of work, an honours degree piece of work, and a piece of this size. You'd have that in a 200 word piece. For this size of a piece, it needs to be substantially more, and they're all incorrectly formatted. So, this should be Irish Statute Book 2020 in brackets, Youth Work Act online in brackets, available from URL, accessed on, and then the date. They're all wrong, and I know they're automatically generated, but there's something wrong with your settings, so you need to check whatever system you're using, and you need to ensure that it's being used correctly. My feeling is that you may potentially have them all in as books, because that's how they appear to be coming up, whereas this is a government report and this is a website. So get familiar with the referencing guidelines and it'll make things a whole lot easier for you. Thanks.